Through the chair, you're live on HCAM TV.
Don't see Rob right now, so I'm trying to take a look at how many people we've got. So we know if John said he was going to be on. There he is. Two.
Looks like we just got 5, Matthew. Michael just signed on. So I've got you, Jane, Lucia, Karen, and Michael.
Did Rob reach out if he was going to?
I spoke to him today, so he was planning on attending. I heard from Vic that he wasn't going to attend. I have not heard anything from Parker or Elise.
Okay, I would
Here's
be
Parker.
inclined to give another couple minutes. Yeah, there's Parker. Especially because I don't have the script anyway. Hey, Parker, we're just going to give anybody else another minute or two, see if they sign in. We expect Rob to be here. So
He didn't forget there's a planning board meeting and he's not at the Celtics game?
All right, Rob is logging in now.
I see him on without audio. There he is.
And Elise just signed on, so I think everybody is here who said they would be here.
Awesome. Let me start by reading the remote meeting script, and we'll get right into our agenda. I hope everyone's having a good Monday, good start to the week. So let me get going here. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access the meeting via virtual means. Participants may access the meeting through the remote meeting link as posted on the meeting agenda and through the town's online calendar. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by raising their hand or otherwise signaling their intent to speak. This meeting will be recorded. Please take care to mute your microphone unless you have been recognized by the chair. We will now confirm attendance of members. Please respond with present if you're on the call. Lise Smialowski?
Present.
Thank you. Lucia Lopez?
Present.
Matthew Ronca?
Present.
Michael King?
Present.
Parker Happ?
Present.
Jane Moran?
Present.
Karen Wills?
Present.
And Rob Benson is present. And Vikasath, we got a note just before the meeting that he wasn't going to be able to make it. So we got 8 of our 9 board members. And for staff, John Gelsich?
Present.
And Lori St. John?
Present.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so let's just, in terms of tonight's agenda, we've got administrative items, which is to continue our MBTA communities discussion, Form K lot release, which basically makes lots available for the developer to sell, approve minutes or talk about the minutes of June 3rd. Then we have 2 public hearings, 90 and 104 Hayden Row, which is the Hopkins School Edition. And then we've got a continued public hearing for Zero East Main Street, which is the pickleball facility that we talked about last meeting. My hope is that we can get through both of those public hearings and get to a vote. So that's kind of, I just want to set that expectation out front. I thought after our last MBTA community discussion, it'd be worthwhile to put together some information to help foster a discussion. I think a lot of ideas and a lot of discussion is good. For people that have been on the board a while, it's been kind of 2 years of discussion. So I think, John, I don't know if you have that presentation I sent to you.
So I do have the PowerPoint.
Yeah,
Did you want me to allow sharing for you, or do you want me to put it up? on the-
I'll share it. Yeah.
All right, let me set the permissions. Okay, should be all set.
So I put this together. I'm going to share my screen in a second. I'll just start by sharing. I put together some information to hopefully foster discussion and to get us to a recommendation for the zoning advisory committee. I would like an outcome of tonight's meeting and discussion to give more, I would say, concrete guidance to the zoning advisory committee to continue their work of putting forward together a proposal for an MBTA overlay district, and hopefully something that will come back to us that we can endorse for our town meeting in the fall or December in the winter. So that's what I'm hoping to do. So I don't think everybody's been aware of some things that have happened in the past. I thought I'd just kind of put light some things that happened in the past, talk about where we are now, and try to recommend a proposal, and then everyone can say, no, that's either they can agree, disagree, propose something else, whatever the collective board wants to do. So let me just get into here. So Hopkinton's growth has been a concern for a while. Back in 2019, we had 2 planning board members that submitted a citizen's petition for annual town meeting to halt any new development in Hopkinton for a year while the impact of the town's growth was studied. This ultimately got shot down at town meeting. It's not typical that 2 planning board members would try to go about that on their own and not have the whole entire board support that, but that's what they tried. So anyways, after that town meeting, the planning board that was in place as of May 2019 decided to form a subcommittee of the planning board called the Growth Study Committee to kind of examine the growth of the town, the impact of that growth, and plan for the future. So there was some work put into that by a subcommittee. It had members, it had some representation from the planning board, it had some representation from the Chamber of Commerce, some at-large representation. And I think we could go through all of the findings at a different point. I don't think that's paramount to tonight's discussion, but it was basically because there was concern around the growth of the town. Go ahead, Parker.
The meeting chat is still enabled. We discussed at the end of the last meeting that we were going to disable that. Is that a test that we have to, or is that something that we have to disable at the admin level? I just want to make sure that we're operating on the same level as we were at the end of last meeting.
John, do you know? I don't know.
So IT said that the chat is set by default, but let's see if I can. Participant can chat with no one. Let's see if that works.
Yes, it says chat disabled on my end, so success.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, thanks, Parker. So at that same town meeting in 2019, there was a plan. A developer wanted to turn the home, or what turned out to be a historic home next to the fire station, into 31 apartments. And at the time, there was a lot of debate whether it was a historic home or whether it wasn't. At the time, it wasn't, and the town meeting decided it was a historic home. And I think not zero residents, but at least some residents didn't want an apartment building of 31 units right in downtown. So, and then just last year at annual town meeting 2023, the planning board put forth a change to our zoning bylaws to require an affordable unit to be built on site after a fourth unit in a subdivision. And since that, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but there's been no new subdivision plans that have gone before the planning board that have been approved. We had one plan come before us where the developer wanted to build the affordable unit offsite, or have a unit offsite, or make a payment in lieu, and we denied his goal. So then that gets into what else has happened. So leading up to town meeting this year in 2024, I knew I was going to be the one talking on behalf of the board. So I did some research and found out that including the Charleswood School, including the Hopkins renovation, including the Marathon School, all the school-related projects, including the modular classrooms for Marathon School, including the modular classroom for Hopkins School, including the additional classrooms at the high school, the town has approved over $200 million in Proposition 2.5 overrides, basically taking on debt to fund these new school projects. So I think that is where residents are feeling that the thought of a major new development project could be a little disconcerting, but I think that's something we need to have more discussion, more dialogue on through the public hearing process with the zoning advisory committee, with our meetings, as we work towards a path forward with the MBTA communities. One other thing I think is important to know is we as a town, I don't believe, and anyone can voice their opinions or objections, but I don't believe we'd be pursuing this type of zoning change or density change anywhere in town if it wasn't part of this MBTA community. So it is by and large something the state is trying to force on towns and communities to kind of help the overall housing situation across the state. So my thinking is we want to put together or put forward a plan to achieve paper compliance, which is fundamental. It's kind of what we did or tried to do at the most recent town meeting. I think we felt the downtown district was already zoned for that density. The preserve, I think a lot of people on the planning board felt it couldn't realistically be developed. All the condo owners in that complex wouldn't realistically sell. And there was this general sentiment it wouldn't be rezoned or be rebuilt because it was developed. And the general sentiment with the Carbonis property and adjoining properties was that there was no water and sewer to support a large scale dense housing. So we tried to achieve paper compliance. So I think we, in general, want to put forward a plan that in general meets the goal of paper compliance, meaning it complies with the rules of the bylaw, but it doesn't have a high probability of having any additional units being built within the next 20 years. And my thinking is zoning is what it is at a point in time. And no, it doesn't change often, but it can change. So if the town wants to modify zoning at any point in time in the future, all it would take a vote at town meeting to modify it. And so I think if there's a need for more housing in the future, I think that is completely fine. But I don't think the general sentiment of the town right now is gung ho for approving zoning that would afford the opportunity to build these housing units in the near term. So I propose a couple options, and this is what I'm hoping the planning everybody on the board can go through and give their opinion and sentiment. But there's two properties in particular. There's one, Woodview Way. This is in Legacy Farms. There's 240 units that are apartments, and this property ID U131-1C. And then there's the Windsor Apartments behind 110 Grill that are 280 units. The total acreage is over 50 acres. I think we should set the zoning advisory committee on a plan or a goal of trying to put together a zoning bylaw where a developer couldn't just add another building to those properties, and that they would actually have to demolish the existing buildings to build new units. I think if they can't come up with a zoning overlay district for those parcels that meets that goal, I think another option would be to keep the district that was previously in the most recent town meeting for downtown. I am not a fan of trying to go back to Windsor. To the preserve. I think they voiced their opinion against that at the most recent town meeting, and in general, I don't think it's great to ignore the will of the voters, and they were a significant enough portion of the voters at town meeting that I think they were the driving force to block the proposal. And I also don't, in general, like properties like Carboni's or the adjoining properties, which are not super financially prohibitive to develop. Yes, it would take water and sewer, but it's also not a lot of physical structure on the properties where I think somebody could make a business case to develop those and more readily than we would want. So this is all I had. This is, I wanted to open up the board. This is, I think just because of the time commitment, normally I would have just let the board continue to discuss if we had a lot more time. But I know John is feeling pressure with trying to get something reviewed and approved. I'm sure the zoning advisory committee is going to feel a time constraint. So if it's okay with the members of the board, I'd like to open it up to everybody to speak. And we can start with whoever raises their hand, and then we can go to just around the table, so to speak. Matthew, go ahead.
So I've got comments on the proposals themselves, but I want to comment on the strategy and specifically. Wallpaper compliance, I think, is a nice term that we've thrown around to describe certain aspects. I don't think we want to be focused on short term. The only thing we want to focus on is let's not build something in 20 years, but we need to think about in 50 years, if somebody does sell something and it happens to develop, is that actually the way we want the town to grow? To grow. We don't want dense housing in some random spot that somehow that's where it ended up. That is one of the nice things about the locations we had, was that it did make sense. Maybe the Windsor Apartments next to the highway makes sense. I mean, there's value in some of these decisions, but I want to make sure that we are not thinking just in terms of compliance with the state law, but that the decisions we make actually make sense in themselves as well. I just want to make that before we go into discussing it.
Thank you, Matthew. I can go around the table, or does anyone have any comments or thoughts, or I'll just go according to our roll call. And like, Elise, do you have any thoughts? What do you think?
Are we allowed to do the condition where they would have to tear down the building? I feel like there were so many restrictions before that that would be something they would shoot down
I think
to
it
be
would.
in compliance.
So I think it's fundamentally doable, where you could set setbacks and side distances. I believe that is what we want the zoning advisory committee to dig into and basically prove or disprove, in my opinion.
Okay, sorry, I'm on my phone. It takes me a while to unmute. I mean, I kind of like that idea because I feel like it puts even more hurdles in the way. I don't know. I just feel like we're gonna submit something and they're gonna be like, no, everything has to be by right and everything has to be.
Keep this on.
I
Sorry,
think
sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here.
child difficulties. I think we can tell.
Yeah. Sorry, I have a 1 week old here, so I'm also like not sleeping. My brain's not working very well. I mean, I like the idea of having a little more hurdles to go through. I guess, like you said, we'd have to have the zoning. We'd have to have Zach like sort of figure it out a little bit better. But I do. I thought previously somebody had mentioned that we couldn't do the apartments at Legacy Farms and we couldn't do the Windsor apartments as part of like our overlay because they would have to have no age restrictions and they would have to have some other restriction lifted, which would change the current housing over there.
I think the general concern. So Windsor and Halstead don't have an age restriction. I think the general concern was the legacy. So Legacy Farms, the Halstead apartments are in the Osmond, and that might be legally confusing. But that's why, in my opinion, we have town council to figure that out. It shouldn't be impossible to figure out. These are lawyers. There's no age restriction on those units in those apartments.
Okay. Then yeah, I mean, I like it. I think it's a good idea since we already have sort of dense housing there.
Thanks. I'm gonna go, Lucia. Well, once again, second meeting. You're being thrown into the fire here.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So I think both Matt and Elise made good points in terms of thinking long term. Is this where we want the super dense housing in the event that it does pass and does get built? And also just can we even put a restriction to say we need to have them demolish buildings before they can build new ones? And then I think my other question is, do we have the time at this point to make changes like this before a December special town meeting?
I think we have. So, we don't have infinite time, but I think we have to try to put together a plan that for a couple things. That one, it will pass town meeting, or our best foot forward for a plan that could pass town meeting. I just resubmitting the same plan that failed, that did not get passed, doesn't seem like a good strategy. So I think we have to evaluate other opportunities or other what is the kind of the art of the possible in terms of a plan that would pass town meeting and wouldn't be controversial. And I agree and hope it would be in the best long-term interest of the town. But setting an objective of 50 years of where dense housing should go 50 years from now is kind of hard. to fathom. Like, I never, I've lived in Hopkinton a long time, over 40 years. And like, I never thought Legacy Farms would be built the way it was. So I don't know how to plan 50 years from now precisely.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
And so hearing you talk, I agree. We do need to take into account the fact that this failed the town meeting. I don't know that saying we want to displace 240 units worth of people or 280 units worth of people by putting either of these two plans forward would make things any better coming to a special town meeting.
So we don't want to displace anybody. We want to make it so there can't be a business case be made to financially destroy what already exists. Like basically it's $80+ million worth of in these cases, like Halstead Apartments, the building is valued at almost $60 million. So to destroy $60 million of buildings and fundamentally have to rebuild them for 80 or 100, your cost is like 140 million to build these apartments, and it's just not financially viable because you can't make a profit. That's what we want to do. We don't want to displace any residents. We don't want anyone to lose where they lived. That's not our goal at all, or my goal. Michael. Oh,
May I ask a question?
sure, Elise.
Do we know if these two properties, the Halstead and the Windsor, are they already the correct density that MBTA housing requires?
So I don't think either one of them is in by themselves. So both, on average, we need to zone for 15 units per acre for 50 acres. So here in totality, it's a little over 50 acres, like 53 acres, and it's only 520 units. So it's not quite the density that could be built within a MBTA TA zoning overlay district.
Because I could be thinking this totally wrong, but if they already were the density or close enough that we could just add a third place, then would we even have to change anything? Couldn't it just stay the apartments the way they are and just have the zoning overlay there?
I think we could have the zoning overlay district on these two apartment complexes. And
So could we potentially add a third zone to fulfill the difference?
But we wouldn't need to, because we would meet the 50 acres. So a developer in the future could build over 750 units on the total area that's over 50 acres. We don't need to add something that already has the additional 230 units. We don't need to do that.
Okay, but so if that's the case, then do we even need to put in a clause that says they would have to tear these down and rebuild? I mean, couldn't that just be our
We don't want
district?
to. We don't want to put a clause like that. We want to put a clause that the setbacks and required make it impossible that they can't build a new building because of the setbacks from the sides and frontage and back of the property. So it's
I see.
It's not. We're not going to put a clause that they have to demolish. It's going to be. Think of it as the buildings in the center of the property. Well, we're going to make any new buildings be in the center of the property too. Would be the goal.
I gotcha. All right.
What if I'm sorry, through the chair.
Sure, Parker, go ahead.
What if we put them on all the gun ranges?
It's the gun ranges are totally possible. I believe the only thing with the gun ranges is there's no existing infrastructure. There's no buildings. There's nothing there. There's very little there. So I don't know how the gun clubs are organized, like the Sportsman's on Lumber Street or the Woodville Rod and Gun are organized. But it seems like they could very easily be sold and very easily be developed if they were sold. But I don't think there's any restrictions to make that the overlay district. I think there'd be a lot of concern that because they could be easily be developed and add 750 units in town within the next so many years.
Hey Rob, I had a question. So what was the what are the mechanics, I guess, of the zoning changes that would have to go through so we could, facilitate or I guess not facilitate, to make it so, it would be unappealing to redevelop the two properties that we're talking about here.
So I think what we need to do, if as a board we decide this is the path we want to set the zoning advisory committee on, they got to do some work to see if it meets the minimum acreage when the wetlands are taken into account. Then they need to see where the current buildings are in terms of setbacks from the sides, front, and back, and if they could even come up with a proposed zoning overlay district rules that makes it so they can't just add another building to basically build out 230 plus additional units in a relatively short term, because that's these entities, the owners of apartment complexes would want to do that. They would want to maximize that. So if they could add another building and could rent, they would want to do that. So if we propose these, we want to make sure that that's not something they can really easily do.
So it would be a special zoning area, then we wouldn't have to change like Res A or Res B or.
That's right. It's an overlay. So like the existing map would stay the same. We'd just be choosing these two parcels or in this example and saying these two parcels are zones. They're also like one's already part of the Osmond, one Windsor, I think is, I don't even know what Windsor is off the top of my head, but we'd be saying those are now part of the overlay district. Karen, go ahead.
Hi, so my question is, so we're going to give some direction to the zoning committee, is that correct?
Yes, that's what we're hoping to do tonight. We're hoping to, before the end of this meeting.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, I understand that. So is the zoning committee aligned with what our intention is? I guess I don't know who's on the zoning committee, so I don't know. Will they look at this and say, oh yeah, we can get the developers to do another 230 units on these type of things? Or are they going to be looking at it and say, yeah, this is our goal is to achieve paper compliance. This is what the planning board is sending us forth to do. So I don't know what their perspective.
The zoning advisory committee is a subcommittee of the planning board. So I believe in general, they'll try to follow guidance of the planning board. If us as a board,
this call, some group of people on this call.
I think if we come up with a recommendation, they could just, I believe they would try to adhere to a recommendation. That would be my opinion.
Okay, so the zoning committee is, as you said, a subset of the planning board. So who on the planning board is on the zoning committee?
Vikasath, who's not, he is our representative from the planning board on the zoning advisory committee.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then just in general, I think this is, thank you for the history and the proposal. I think this does achieve kind of what we're looking to do. Assuming all the I's are dot, or, what is that? The I's are crossed and the T's are dotted, in terms of being able to do all of this, and have it get all approved. So I think that that's, you know, yeah, there's some things we have to check out, but I think that's just kind of part and parcel going through it. But I think this looks like a good plan. Thank you for putting it together.
Thanks, Karen. Matthew, go ahead.
Just to clarify first, to answer Karen. So it's not just members of this body. It's the zoning advisory committee has planning board liaisons, but their goal is basically to advise on zoning and help us with our job. So it's mostly people that aren't actually on the planning board proper, but we do have Vic Soth, who's the liaison. We have a liaison every year. I think it makes sense. Now onto the proposal, Rob. I think it makes sense to ask Zach to look at Windsor Apartments again because it's something they had already looked at. I know there were reasons why it was dropped. Offhand, I can't remember exactly what their concerns were. I know they were also looking at Thinning Brook condominiums and some other spots of land, and the concern there was that it was too easy to rebuild in short order. I don't think we should completely ignore the proposals that have been vetted. I don't want to ignore the concerns of the residents at the preserve either, but we do know that that is a proposal that has been accepted by experts at the state, and it's something that I think we should continue to voice as an option as we talk about possible options, just because there are pros and cons. And I think it would be interesting for Zach, when they look at, say, the Windsor Apartments, to compare and contrast possible scenarios and just verify some of the concerns that were raised at town meeting in terms of growth, in terms of traffic, how that would impact the town proper. I know there was concerns about the Osmond with the Halstead Apartments. Was there a reason why you wanted to drop the downtown district in favor of that area? Just did not come in with enough units?
Not in particular, no. If the downtown district has enough land area, and I don't know exactly I think it's not quite enough land area. I think it's only 11 or 12 acres. So I wanted to get above the 50 try to simplify it to get above 50 acres, but the downtown district, if it is enough acreage and I'm mistaken, it's already zoned for that density of housing to be built. I am not opposed to that either. Like, I think if we could rewind time to 2 years ago, we might have come up with three options. We might have come up with option A, option B, option C, that we thought each option would have met the criteria. I know it would have been really hard, but I think that would have, like, if I could rewind time, I think that would have been a better path forward, but we didn't. I don't even think we thought like that at that time.
I mean, I've got John's slides from January 8th, I think it is, or open, that talked about all the various maps that we talked about last year. Windsor is one of the ones that was still selected there. And there was a separate segment in downtown that we could add to that, which the main concern, I think, is making sure that we still have 50% of the area contiguous. But I think it sounds like we're basically going back to some of the earlier October maps that Zach had, and with the concerns that the town raised, asking them to think about the pros and cons with those in mind, and try and consider the growth issues.
Yes.
I also I know getting Zach something to work with is also something that's important to do given the timeline. Did we want to talk about some of the other concerns that were raised in terms of getting people's feedback on the different approaches, or did you expect to do that once we had feedback from Zach? And
I think it really needs to be a combination of of the public hearing process. I don't think we talked about last time about sending out, is it realistic to send out a mailer? Is it realistic to try to somehow do a Survey Monkey survey? And I just am coming against how we do that in practice, how we do that in reality. Like we don't have the town's population's email addresses. We don't have, like, if we send out a mailer to fill out the survey, it's I don't think it's going to be well. I don't think we'll get what we want. So I don't know how to do it. But if anyone else does,
So
I'm all for it.
I know we did some town meetings and we did some outreach last time. As we're looking at specific areas, I think making it clear that we're looking at those areas and then scheduling kind of in short order something to let people talk to us, so it's not all done at town meeting, and give them some discussions. I think the biggest concern that came out of town meeting was, and you raised the concern about growth of the town, right? Was growth of the town. That's not something that we necessarily can avoid and still stay in compliance. And so separating people's concerns about the law in general and the areas that we selected, I think are important things to be able to do. And a lot of the arguments at town meeting, I think, used one to argue against the other, and maybe that drew some people that maybe hadn't really thought about the whole process. And so that's something that, rather than just having people grasp at straws to prevent something in one specific area, like making sure that everybody who's interested in the MBTA zoning has another opportunity, since this is now on everybody's mind coming out of town meeting. A lot of people that probably ignored it before might be trying to understand the problem better. Having a meeting outside the planning board to talk about.
I do think that is significant, that it might have been, and I don't necessarily. The people that attend town meeting, like it's kind of hard to believe, like, if they're invested enough to go to town meeting, how they don't know these things are coming before the town at town meeting, because they typically, that is the populace percent, that is the group of the population that is invested in the politics of the town and these type of issues. So I don't know how that really happened, because all these meetings are posted, our agendas are posted, and obviously people aren't looking. But I do think, because it failed at last town meeting, it is more on people's radar now.
So I think that's why having Zach look at the different opportunities and having us in our presentation actually explain why the solution that we picked makes the most sense for the town and why we couldn't choose other options is important. I don't think that's something we really described. We explained these are the strict parts of the law, and we said these are the places we picked. They meet the requirements, so we should vote for it. We didn't explain why we didn't pick other units, or what the drawbacks would have been of picking other units, other plots of land. I mean, it's complex to find an area that is complex to develop in the short term, considering that we have to have half the acreage contiguous. We've got density requirements. If we're not picking Windsor, if we're not picking the preserves, right, we're starting to just pick large plots of land. It becomes a lot harder to pick things that aren't likely to potentially be developed and don't have infrastructure in terms of roads to work for the town. I think it's important for us to have a reason why we pick the areas, and not just assume that the reason why it failed last time was specifically the selection we picked, but not concerns over school growth was one of the things that was raised. Traffic was something that was raised. Things that are just universal that we need to address regardless of what we pick.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Matthew. Parker, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just putting together some analysis here, and I think that we need to ask from Zach key considerations. So it's three things. We need to ask Zach for key considerations for paper compliance, which would be that whatever plan alternative from the one that we put forth at town meeting would meet the zoning requirements, would have minimal community impact, and would ensure, and when we say community impact, I think everybody agrees to not have to add additional schools due to any sort of huge development. And then finally, that ideally the place would have existing infrastructure, which could mitigate any sort of desire to build. And what we haven't discussed now is underutilized commercial areas. So in the South Street corridor, there are commercial properties that are presently undesirable from some potential tenants due to different various complications, and that looking at some that if they were rehabilitated, it could be in the interest of the town to have those properties revitalized, could be part of a potential twofold impact for achieving paper compliance, but also still having a better impact, because I think we could agree that having infrastructure that isn't hazardous removed, or sorry, having infrastructure that's hazardous removed in favor of something like an investment could be good for the town long term. So just a little bit of nuance on that point of existing infrastructure, but we haven't discussed underutilized commercial zones or potential industrial zones. But to that effect, zoning requirements that meets a minimal community impact, and then existing infrastructure should be on and for consideration new map. However, I still believe that the map that we put forth is a good idea. We have presently in the preserve, there is a huge PFAS issue. They have private water that in the instance that possibly in the future water was brought down in that direction, there's a possibility that preserve residents could benefit from having water that isn't toxic or polluted with PFAS. And it could be, you could argue in their interest, a good idea to potentially have the Carbonis property as a potential future development. And I think that by us taking away the preserve and moving, or potentially even Carbonis, that we're creating a new hydra, because it's acknowledging tacitly as a board that we will essentially adjust our tact if there's enough agita at day 3 of town meeting. But I think that enough, we lost by literally 5 votes. That was it. Like, I genuinely believe that this was a outreach and education issue, and that there's tangible benefits that folks could reap from the existing proposal. So possibly, in addition to a complete re-review, Zach offers a second map, which would be a slight adjustment of our existing map, with the caveat being paper compliance and no possible growth, which is what the Carbonis and adjacent lot potentially created for the town. Otherwise, what else are we doing? I mean, I think that it was a good map. We could tweak it a little bit, but there are tangible benefits that if we did a better job at messaging, into your question, how do we do that? We don't have to do a MailChimp. We don't have to do a mailer. Like, I'll go door to door every day until town meeting and drop off a flyer, or even, in advance of that with the copy on, and print it myself, because I genuinely believe that it would be in the interest of the town for us to have some sort of survey mechanism, and for folks to feel heard and have that opportunity. But that's what I would suggest is 2 maps, 1 slightly adjusted, 1 completely re-envisioned. And appreciate you taking the moment to hear me out.
I am sympathetic to the will of the voters. So I think one thing that select board has run into over the last years is there's been some percent of population doesn't feel like their voices are being heard by the select board. I don't want that kind of sentiment to be prevalent with the planning board. I think we want to be sympathetic, but we also want to put together good plans. So in this instance, yes, it was only a few votes that it failed by, but it did fail. So to resubmit the same plan doesn't seem like we're listening to the voters to me.
Respectfully, through the chair, I did say resubmit the same plan. I said with a slight adjustment of mitigating the Carbonis property, because I think if we look at the preserve, you can't build it. And if we have the caveat that we just said that you have to demolish all the units, and the preserve has a clause in their bylaws that states any change to the preserve must be passed unanimously, that satisfies the condition of that property being completely ineligible. And if we educated based on the parameters of that kind of language within any sort of plan, I would hope that cooler heads would prevail. And we could still look like we're in the spirit of the law as per the state. And again, my fear is always that if we completely backtrack from this plan and do something totally different, one, it's going to confuse people even more. We don't look convicted. And two, we're basically going to ask for the ire of the state, who will come down on us for, essentially stubbing their nose at them. And I want to see, yes, paper compliance, but if we look like we're trying to be compliant, that the optics of that could be better if we are designating within the actual zone of the train station. Because I don't want any more lawsuits. I don't want the town to be subject to excise scrutiny. It was 5 votes. We can get those.
So I don't know if everybody on the board is aware, but leading up to town meeting, John had some outreach sessions with the Preserve in particular. He had a 2.5-hour meeting to basically do a Q&A to answer their questions. And the overwhelming result was the Preserves just didn't see the positives in their property being included. So I don't know that more time is going to change that. So that'd be my thinking. Michael, go ahead.
Sorry, my screen just went weird. I was just going to point out that, I didn't hear any huge opposition to, the town center being included in the overlay district at town meeting. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think John said too that it would actually be less dense housing than is able to be used there by right too. So I wouldn't discount having that area in the future plan just because, there's some value propositions I think to having it that would be, potentially appealing to try to sell it at town meeting. So.
Yeah, I have that as like a possible plan B, but it could be plan A. Like, I think we want to send my opinion is we tried to do this without being as clear to the voters of town meeting and as clear to the zoning advisory committee that we want to put forth a plan where we don't think units will be built within the next 20 years. I think we want to achieve this paper compliance goal. And I think we just want to set that as the expectation. And I know it probably looks better if it's like, well, maybe, but I think the state has it's either complies with the law or doesn't. Like they can't get in the business of judgment. That's not, I don't think that's really what they can do. Go ahead, Matthew.
2 things. One, I know Zach originally had a lot of different options, and they're looking at what could be built now, what could be built later. I believe towards the end of their negotiations, their deliberations, they were looking at things that did have a not immediate impact for the most part. That's how we ended up where we are. Regarding the votes of the people at the Preserve, and I respect that, but they're part of the town, and we should respect everybody in the town. However, in terms of the proposal, right, it's still, we need to figure out what's best for Hopkinton in long term. We have a plan that was validated. If we are putting together another plan in front of the town, we should be able to compare what we're proposing at that point with what we proposed last time and explain why one is better than the other. So I don't think we should just completely ignore what we proposed last time, but any other plan that we come up with now, we should be able to compare it to that and explain why this one is better or not better, right? We should be able to compare and contrast the pros and the cons.
I don't disagree. I think from a sentiment point of view, these 2 properties already have 520 units. So like worst case scenario, people would think they're already have super dense, so the maximum increase would be smaller. Whereas properties that haven't been developed, the increases in units could be significantly more.
You're talking about the ones that you've got in your proposal?
Yeah, I think that would be the justification.
So one one's about 13 units per acre right now. The other's 7.8.
Yep. But in totality, so they don't, in our last proposal, like both land areas or all the 3 land areas, they didn't all have over 15 units per acre zoning capacity. It's the average that you need to allow for the overlay district to have an average of 15 units or more per acre. So one parcel could have an average of 7. Another parcel could have an average of 23, and you get to, if it's the same size parcels, you get to the average of 15.
It seems like the overall growth potential is greater with these properties, though, than what we presented, and it's going to. I mean, Lumber Street is crowded. That's a frustrating area right now. Main Street East is 135, right? Is just. It's always fun during rush hour in the afternoon. Not sure it's the best location.
So I'd like to get to some term of general consensus, like in terms of we're 55 minutes into our meeting.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Jane.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your slide presentation. I think it was a helpful reminder to be hearing again over the years what the town's meetings has voted on as far as, reluctance for more growth, the importance to keep, there's a high interest in keeping the schools from growing any more than we have to. I think the priority was, and it was a helpful reminder. I think that we to go back with a similar plan that we presented last year. I don't think that would go over very well, even though it was only by a few votes. It doesn't matter. The people that were interested in being heard showed up for that town meeting. So it was, I heard it loud and clear. I think also that keeping it simple would be much easier for us to explain. By having those 2 properties, people, and they're already developed, and by asking Zach to look at some way of putting setback plans and, other restrictions on it, that's where that could be done. But I think we have to go in with a new message. To go back with a similar message that we had last year, I think will be frustrating for a lot of people. If we want this to, go forward, having a clear message going forward with a different, different plan might just work. I'm in favor of this presentation of having the 2 properties go forward. And if we do send something down to Zach with those thoughts, I think your slide presentation would be helpful to remind them of where we've been and where we want to go.
Thanks, Jane. I think because we're at an hour, and we probably could talk about this another hour or more, I'd like to take like a straw poll vote or straw poll. It's not an official vote. To basically, if you're on board with giving the zoning advisory committee direction to try to achieve the overlay district in what we have determined, what we're calling paper compliance, where we don't think this would be built realistically in the next 20 years. And so I'm just going to go down the roll call, and you can say yes or no, and we'll use that as our first kind of guidance. If it's no, it's no. If it's yes. We'll use that to try to guide the zoning advisory committee.
Can we phrase it, Rob? Can we just
Sure.
rephrase it as minimal development in the next 20 years as a goal?
Yeah, sure. Yes, that I like that. That we would like to basically achieve paper compliance with minimal risk of development in the overlay district. That's our goal. Elise, what do you think?
Yes. I mean, I think that's what Zach was already doing, but clearly the town didn't agree. But yes, my answer is yes.
All right, Lucia.
I agree with achieving compliance with minimal chance of development, but I want to add the caveat that those 2 properties might have the bulk of our affordable housing. And if there's any chance that they will be torn down to be redeveloped, we need to be sure that we're still going to be above our 10% affordable housing numbers so that we don't get another 40B development in their
That might have been the
place
issue
while
with
this is
Windsor.
happening. Yeah, so.
I don't. I know. I know both of these have affordable units in them. I don't know. We'd have to. Yes, I agree with what you said, Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with asking the Zach to figure out what options make the are best for the town to minimize short-term growth while maximizing the efficiency of the town long-term. And I do think that anything they come up with, we need to compare to the previous plan.
Michael.
Yeah, no, I'd be in favor of getting an option, that would result in minimal growth while, obviously being compliant with the law. So yes.
Parker.
I would echo the sentiments of Lucia and say, yeah, we just don't want to kind of trade one problem for another. But yeah, I'd be open to hear what Zach says.
Karen.
Yep, I think I'm in agreement. I like the way you framed it, paper compliance and minimal possibility of growth. I think it's a good plan. And I think to Jane's point, that's how you start when you're presenting to the town. We've heard you loud and clear. This is our new plan, and this is why the new plan meets those goals. So I think it's a good plan.
Thanks, Karen. And I agree with the message we want to give to the zoning advisory committee. Who spoke?
Through the chair.
Yeah, John.
Just so, because I also work with Zach, so I'm going to probably be the messenger on this one. I'm just trying to understand when you guys are saying these guidelines of minimal impact. I mean, we've got 5 months to have this before town meeting, so we've got 3 months during the summer to figure it out. I'm just trying to figure out how Zach is going to find those properties aside from just saying, look, evaluate it with Woodview and Windsor, rather than this more general thing, because Zach has very limited time to do a lot of analysis. And to be frank, it's going to be me who's going to be doing the analysis for Zach, and my time is incredibly limited as well. So I like more concrete guidance, I think, would be helpful. And even if it is just take out Preserve, take out Carbones, add these two, I think that would be helpful, because then we can analyze that proposal and figure out where the holes are, rather than trying to figure out what could work and then analyzing 3 or 4 different proposals to then see which one works best, to then bring it to the planning board for the hearing process, to then have to go through all of that. It's a really tight timeline to do any kind of analysis at this point and still make it on for December.
John, what if we said try to evaluate Windsor, Halsted, and the downtown area and come up with a plan that has the least acreage?
Yeah, that would be helpful, because that identifies the areas that you would want to evaluate. But just having a general, like, hey, let's get the least amount of impact. I mean, that's looking potentially at every property and evaluating how much impact we have. And we wouldn't have had time for that on the initial try.
All right,
It's just a lot of work. And then the other one I just want to bring up is with the affordable. I think maybe the concern that Lucia and Parker and some others are having is that those two were developed. One of them was developed under a 40B. One of them was developed as essentially a friendly 40B, where they do 25% of the housing units as affordable, which then makes all of the housing units affordable on the SHI. So for Woodview, you've only got, what, 20%? So a little over 50 units were affordable, but all 240 units are on the SHI. So if for some reason a developer were to demolish that property, all of those units would come off the SHI and only 10% would go on, because that would be the requirement under MBTA communities. So you'd be losing 15% of the units, well, you'd be losing 90% of the units in that development. So I think that's the concern. And that's something that we need to evaluate as to how that would happen. Could they even build something like what they have, or can they add on, and how does that impact everything? But again, that's just a concern that we may, going into town meeting, we may not know if the proposal is going to comply because we haven't heard back from the state in time on these relatively complex legal questions that may not have been contemplated in other towns to this level. So I just want to caution the board about how much really needs to go into this on the back end, because it's not just let's move around these properties. It's creating a new district, making sure that the dimensional requirements are appropriate and achieve compliance in the model. And we're still trying to not have a big impact on the town, which I think losing a lot of affordable units, should that be a side effect of, and including these properties, which we don't know, we have to look into that. It's just, it's a big balancing act for a very short period of time to then, for Zach to do, and then to have them bring it to the planning board for planning board to also do, right? Those are my concerns.
Thanks, John. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I think we'd like to understand the viability of these, basically the downtown district, the two other properties listed here, and come forward with a plan that's the least acreage that meets the requirements and not be at risk of losing our affordable housing numbers, for lack of a better word. Matthew, go ahead.
John raises a good concern about the timeline, and I just want to make sure that we're aware of that. If Zach's going to schedule something before July 1st meeting, presumably they're going to set off to look at this. Do we think we'd actually have proposals and the effect on the town by August at that point? And what do we need to change in the warrant? We just need, the only things we're planning on changing are specific to whichever overlays we plan to create, and the differences in the setbacks and the area specific things, or do we need to? We haven't even talked about any of the other bylaw changes.
There's no warrants for a town meeting yet, so we don't have to. There's nothing to change. The overall zoning bylaw that was created for the different parcels, yeah, it's not an insignificant amount of work to get it done in a short amount of time. That's where we are, though. I don't know what else this.
I'm just trying to think back, right? So the warrant, if we have the 12/9 or 12/16, basically the warrant closes Thanksgiving, either right before or right after Thanksgiving. And so I think we took about a month or two to finalize the legal drafts last time. And so we need to have the board basically agree on everything by early September, I think, working backwards. And so I'm just trying to figure out what that means in terms of how much we can discuss, how much time Zach needs or John needs, and what level of degree we can discuss, and even what level of degree we can get community feedback on in that time frame.
It's not an easy. I don't disagree. It's not an easy problem to solve, but we have to just keep working towards the solution as opposed to not. So I think that's where we are. Does anyone, I don't know if we want to do another roll call vote because it takes time, but does anybody have an objection to basically set forth for at least kind of three areas? The downtown district that we originally proposed last time, that's already allows for dense housing to equivalent, basically at the MBTA level. These two apartments complexes, try to and advise the zoning advisory committee to come up with the least land area that meets the goal without risking diminishing our affordable housing units. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes, I think we should. for John's sake, clarify what all the least amount of. That's a lot of different radiuses, right? We want to come back and understand what is the impact to affordable housing, what is the other perceived impacts to the town, what is the perceived short-term growth or long-term growth that these areas would have. Like, how many units do we think would be buildable in the next 20 years? How many do we think would be built? Like, what's the total delta? And that allows us to review the different options. And I guess maybe from John's point of view, like, which combinations can we actually put together and look like they'll comply? Because we've got issues with contiguity and density that I don't know. I don't know how much that time takes to figure out.
Thanks, Matthew. I think that's what we're hoping. It's just setting a focus of these three areas. Go ahead, Michael.
So we have Woodview, we have Freedom Way, Legacy Farms, and then we have downtown. Would it be worth putting Carboni's, that property, back on the table too, or do people think that it's so, unappealing to people at town meeting? Most of the pushback I think I heard was from people at the preserve. So.
I don't think at least somebody had a concern about Carboni's would maybe be the easiest property to develop.
Yeah.
I think we want to set focus to less than more, and if one of the two that have the affordable housing units, we need to pivot relatively quickly and come up with another land area that meets the objective.
Yeah, that would be the idea.
Go ahead, Matthew.
To specifically Michael's question, I don't think Carboni's on its own serves any purpose. It's not big enough to help, and it will detract from the contiguity requirement of half the total zone being contiguous. I do think we should compare whatever numbers we have to the original proposal, if only to help explain why the proposal we're presenting is better than the last one, to the 100 and something people that voted for it last time, and why. Explained why didn't we pick it last time, because we didn't have time to review these criteria. We took people's feedback, and this is why this one's better. I do think we need to compare to those, and John probably already has the most numbers for that than any of the ones that we haven't done already. So I think we should look at those two, just the numbers to compare.
I agree. For town meeting, we should have be well informed and be able to articulate the previous proposal, the new proposal, and why it and the kind of the delta in benefit. So I agree. I'm going to stop sharing. I think we have general consensus, and I want to move on to our next agenda item, which is Form K, Emerald Drive, lots 6 and 7. 20th Century Homes. I don't see. I see Craig Nation. I see Chris. I'm not sure who's if you'd like to give a brief introduction of what you'd like done here.
Good evening.
Hi, Chris.
Chris Nation, representing Emerald Drive. I'm just here for releasing of the 2 lots. I believe everything that we need is in order with John.
All right. John, do you want to give just your opinion of the situation?
Sure. So Form K is something for a subdivision. Once they construct the road and pay a bond and record a, I forget what form it is, but it's the conditional approval agreement with the town, they can then request to have lots released for sale, and the planning board just has to approve those. So they've already had some lots released, which, they've paid the bond that the planning board reviewed, and they've paid the fee, and It's just basically a formality vote of the planning board to decide whether to release these lots or not. And then I will note, so I don't have to talk later, if this is approved, this is a weird document that all 5 members of the board have to come in because I have to notarize signatures. So this isn't something I can sign on your behalf. So if it gets approved, you guys would need to come into the office.
Okay. Are there any questions from anyone on the board?
No.
Hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion that the planning board endorse the Form K lot release for lots 6 and 7 as shown on the Emerald Drive OSL PD subdivision plan.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Thanks. Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Jane. I'm just going to go through roll call here. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is yes. Thanks. So let's try to get down to town hall tomorrow if possible to get this this signed off as soon as we can. So I'll try to get down there. Any of the other board members that can get down there and sign this for John so we can get it to the applicant. All right. Thanks, Chris.
Great. Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. All right, we're on to discussing minutes of our June 3rd, 2024 meeting. Anyone have any comments about the minutes, the meeting minutes?
I do. I'd like to. Sorry. I did. Yeah.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Oh, were you doing?
Yep. I've got. I'd just like to propose one change at the bottom of. There are no pages. At the end of the MBTA zoning discussion, second paragraph from the bottom, changing as to as and a colon. So just summarizing, sum up the discussion as colon, community outreach, zoning advisory committee meetings to get more information and suggestions.
Lori, did you get that?
Sorry, my mouse was frozen. So the second paragraph as.
Penultimate paragraph. The penultimate paragraph of the MBTA zoning discussion.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right.
I had something too.
Go ahead, Lucia.
So page 3, where it starts, Ms. Lopez stated, it specifies a date of December 16. I never had a specific date. I did say December, so we just strike 16. I don't know where that date came from, but and then under page 4, Chestnut Sidewalks, it says Mr. Benson asked, Mr. Barazzi asked about. So just striking the second asked.
I'm sorry, what page was that on?
The same
Page
same
4.
page.
Page 4? Okay.
Under the Chestnut Sidewalks.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there's no more suggested edits, with the proposed changes outlined by Matthew and Lucia, I'd like to entertain a motion that the planning board approve the minutes of June 3rd, 2024 as modified. As now modified. Thank you, Matthew.
Second.
Thanks, Jane. Elise, how do you vote?
Yes.
Lucia, how do you vote?
Yes.
Matthew, how do you vote?
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. All right. Thanks, everybody. All right, so we're on to public hearing for 90 and 104 Hayden Row. So I think the public hearing is still open from our prior meetings. We don't close the public hearing until it's done, so I believe it's still open. So this is for the Hopkins School Edition. We have kind of hold on, I'm just going. So I think we have a clean report back from Ty and Bond in conjunction with the developer about any environmental impact. Who's representing Ty and Bond on the call? I don't see.
Through the chair. So Jean Christie was the contact, but I don't know if she was going to attend because she attended the last meeting and said that the traffic letter, I think, was the only one that was left open.
Okay.
And
all right.
that one also came back clean with a few conditions, and I added those conditions to the draft conditions in your memo.
All right. So I'm gonna just start like for people on the board following along by the meeting materials. I'm gonna try to follow the outline here, page 6, I guess. Actually, I'm a little backwards here where I should start. Do we need to review like the comments from the health department to start at section 2.6, John?
So it's up to the board what you take into account into the discussion. These are the comments that have been submitted by the Board of Health. I mean, there's no requirement that you address them. There's no requirement that you do anything, but they are comments from another department. And then, yeah, I guess it's knowing what the decision criteria is, the waivers, and then any other comments, I think, are the things that still need to be addressed.
All right, I will leave it up to the board. We have basically comments from the health department. I'll just quickly kind of go through them. If there's any anyone wants to discuss, just raise your hand. The health department requires that during the construction phase, suitable permitted portable restroom facilities will be provided. In addition, water should not be allowed to pond during construction activities to minimize insect larvae activity. Dust mitigation measures should be provided when excessive dust is created during excavation activities and sweeping operations. So 2.6.2, Ty and Bond engineering review letter, comment 20, we recommend that the board consider it a condition of approval requiring that the additional soil testing should be completed within the proposed infiltration system and rain garden before construction starts, and results should be shared with Ty and Bond for final review. Comment 46, we recommend that the board consider a condition of approval requiring that additional soil testing shall be completed within the proposed infiltration system and rain garden. That's the same. It's the same comment 20 and comment 46. Traffic review letter by Ty and Bond. We recommend predicted queues on the school driveway be monitored and managed over time as school enrollment grows, particularly when the school addition is completed and the grade level swaps occur, and recommend the planning board include this as a conditional of approval. Comment 72, the crossing guard positioned at the school driveway at Hayden Row Street should continue to manage traffic flows on Hayden Row Street. The crossing guard should continue to balance queuing on Hayden Row Street while ensuring vehicles are able to enter and exit the school as efficiently as possible. Comment 73, queues on Hayden Row Street should not impact the adjacent traffic signal to the north of Grove Street or impede traffic flow and operations at other major driveways along Hayden Row Street. The town may consider do not block intersection signs and or pavement markings at driveways along Hayden Row Street as necessary based on future queues. The school district may consider similar signage and or markings within the school campus
as to not block access to driveways due to queuing. We recommend the board include the considerations of these measures as a condition of approval. All right, comment 74, consider utilizing an additional crossing guard at the Hayden Row Street Hopkins intersection to mitigate queuing as necessary. Comment 75, the district town should reevaluate traffic operations at Hayden Row Street Hopkins School driveway intersection following the completion of the school addition and completion of the new Charleswood School to determine if additional mitigation measures should be considered along Hayden Row Street or on the internal school driveways. Based on the proposed traffic signal at the proposed Charleswood School driveway at Hayden Row Street to the south, it is recommended the town evaluate the potential need for a traffic signal at the Hopkins School driveway following completion of the project. And do I just need to read the section 2.8 in its entirety, the decision criteria? Or does before I read it, does anybody have any questions about it?
Through the chair, you don't need to read the site plan criteria.
Okay, good.
We would want to read the language of the findings, the language of the decision, and then that includes the conditions of both permits.
So I should read the findings 2.10 first before the requested waivers?
No, it doesn't necessarily matter what order. It's just that those are the items that need to be read aloud because those are the decisions the board is making. The standards are just a decision criteria. It's not the actual decision that the board is making. The findings are saying that they meet the site plan standards. So you don't have to read all those word for word, but the conditions we generally read word for word, and then the language of the findings so that there's a motion saying the board finds that X, Y, and Z.
All right, so I'm going to start by reading the proposed. I think this is what you said, John. The proposed findings I have to read out loud.
It's just that the certain things in this memo are the language of the decision that has to go in the decision, and that's what the board is voting on. So that has to be said so that everyone is aware of what is being voted on. And that includes the findings and the waivers and the conditions. So we can't just say, okay, does everyone agree with the conditions as written in the memo? Because some people might not be aware of what they are. So we need to read them so that everyone is aware of what they are.
Okay.
With the findings and the
So I'm going to start by reading the proposed findings. The proposed section 2.10 for people following along in the packet of info. The proposed major project site plan conforms to the site plan standards as described in section 210-136.1 of the zoning bylaws. The granting of the requested waivers has been determined to be in the public interest and not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the site plan standards. The granting of these waivers is not anticipated to adversely impact the surrounding neighborhood or the public in general. Pursuant to section 210-124.1, the development triggers site plan review for the alteration of a parking area. As such, the development is required to provide at least 10% of the total spaces, 14 parking spaces as EVSE installed parking spaces, or 20% of the total spaces, which 28 parking spaces as EV ready parking spaces. The applicant has stated that they will provide 14 EVSE installed parking spaces as part of the proposed work. The proposed conditions. After finding that it was so this is 2.11 for people following along. After finding that it was in the public interest and not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the site plan standards, the planning board waived strict compliance with the following provisions of 210-136.1, the site plan standards. The waivers of the provisions allow the construction of the development as shown on the approved plans. Site plan submission requirements, waive administrative fee. Site plan submission requirements, waive environmental impact assessment. Site plan submission requirements, waive community and financial impacts assessment. The Director of Municipal Inspections inspects projects under construction for compliance with the approved decision of site plan review. This includes the driveway, roadway, and infrastructure construction shown on the plan. If applicable, If the Director of Municipal Inspections determines at any time before or during construction that a registered professional engineer or other such outside professional is required to assist with the inspections of the stormwater management system or any other component of the site plan, the applicant shall be responsible for the cost of those inspections. All construction activities shall adhere to applicable local, state, and federal laws and regulations regarding noise, vibration, dust, sedimentation, and the use of interference with or blocking of town roads. The applicant shall be responsible for mitigating all construction-related impacts, including erosion, siltation, and dust control. The applicant shall maintain all portions of any public way used for construction, access free of soil, mud, or debris deposited due to use by construction vehicles associated with the project, and shall regularly sweep such areas as directed by the Director of Municipal Inspections in consultation with the Department of Public Works Director. The applicant shall regularly remove construction trash and debris from the site in accordance with good construction practice and the construction management plan. No tree stumps, demolition material, trash, or debris shall be burned or buried on the site. All exterior lighting within the development project, whether shown on the approved site plan or required by the Massachusetts State Building Code, shall be shielded, directed downward, and not upward or outward, and shall not spill onto adjacent property. Item 7. All fixed mechanical equipment on the site shall be screened from view from the ground. Such screening shall be sufficient in the opinion of the Director of Municipal Inspections. If construction has not commenced within 3 years of the date of the filing of the site plan decision with the town clerk, approval should be automatically rescinded unless such time is extended by the board. For the purposes of this condition, the term commenced shall mean the commencement of site work. Construction may occur only between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturdays between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. pursuant to Chapter 141, Article 1 of the Town of Hopkinton General Bylaws. The applicant shall submit final as-built plans to the planning board prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Item 11, the applicant developer shall provide the principal planner with a project point of contact and contact information prior to the issuance of a building permit. This point of contact information will be kept current through correspondence to the principal planner until the final certificate of occupancy is issued or construction is otherwise considered complete. A completed signed construction management plan shall be submitted to the planning board prior to the commencement of any site work. The applicant shall also submit a revised full plan set which incorporates all the modifications made during the public hearing process and any required in this decision. A completed signed long-term operation and maintenance plan shall be submitted to the planning board prior to the commencement of construction. This can be combined with a construction management plan if preferred by the applicant. A signed illicit discharge statement shall be provided to the planning board prior to construction. Erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be implemented during the construction period in accordance with the approved site plan and the construction management plan. If they are found to be inadequate, the applicant shall immediately correct any deficiencies. Item 16. The planning board shall receive a sign-off confirming that the site contractor and any major subcontractors have received the construction management plan prior to the commencement of any site work. Additional soil testing shall be completed within the proposed infiltration system and rain garden before construction starts, and results shall be shared with the planning board's peer review consultant for final review and confirmation of appropriateness of the design. Predicted queues on the school driveway shall be monitored and managed over time as school enrollment grows, particularly when the school addition is completed and the grade level swaps occur as needed. With any changes to traffic circulation and design as a result of the management, be submitted to the principal planner prior to implementation. Queues on Hayden Row Street are not anticipated to adversely impact the adjacent traffic signal to the north at Grove Street or to impede traffic flow and operations at other major driveways along Hayden Row Street. However, the planning board may consider do not block intersection signs and or pavement markings at driveways along Hayden Row Street as necessary based on future queues. The school department may consider similar signage and or markings within the school campus as to not block access to driveways due to queuing, and shall inform the principal planner of any such proposed signage or markers prior to installation. The school department should reevaluate traffic operations at the Hayden Row Street Hopkins School driveway intersection following the completion of the school addition and the completion of the new Charleswood School to determine if additional mitigation measures should be considered along Hayden Row Street or on the internal school driveways. The school department shall inform the principal planner of any proposed changes to this intersection prior to implementation. Based on the proposed traffic signal at the proposed Charleswood School driveway at Hayden Row Street to the south, it is recommended to the school department evaluate the potential need for a traffic signal at the Hopkins School driveway following completion of the project. The school department shall inform the principal planner of any proposed mitigation measures prior to implementation. So now I'm going to kind of go back up to the waivers. Requested waivers, major site plan. Site plan submission requirements, waive administrative fee. Site plan submission requires waive environmental impact assessment. Site plan submission requirements, waive community and financial impacts assessment. So let me now go to And John, do I need to read the stormwater management permit, section 2.11.12?
Two dot 11.2.
Yeah, 2.11.2.
Yes, those are the conditions for the stormwater management permit. So
Okay.
it may make sense through the chair to discuss the site plan and see if there's any comments from the public or from the board. And then kind of go from there. And then if none, move on to the stormwater management permit and read those conditions and findings and vote on the waivers. So you need to vote on the waivers for both of them separately.
Okay. So yeah, for everybody's just trying to level set, we're trying to review the site plan as well as the stormwater management plan. So for the site plan, I just read the findings, the conditions, and the waiver requested waivers. So now, is there anyone that has any questions about like the site plan and those kind of the findings, conditions, or waivers requested that I read out loud? I think in general, it makes sense to read the stormwater management, the same conditions, if there's any findings and waivers, and then take the two subsequent votes at the end. So unless anyone objects, that's what my plan is. So 2.11.12, the stormwater management permit, these are the conditions. After finding that it was in the public interest and not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the stormwater bylaw or stormwater regulations, the planning board waives strict compliance with the following provisions of chapter 172 of the general bylaws. SMP submission requirements, waive administrative fee. SMP submission requirements, waive stormwater completion surety. Section 2 here. All erosion and sediment control should comply with the following performance criteria. Minimize total area of disturbance and protect natural features in soil. Sequence activities to minimize simultaneous areas of disturbance. Mass clearings and grading of the entire site shall be avoided. Minimize peak rate of runoff in accordance with the Massachusetts stormwater standards. Minimize soil erosion and control sedimentation during construction, provided that prevention of erosion is preferred over sedimentation control. Divert uncontaminated water around disturbed areas. Maximize groundwater recharge. Install and maintain all erosion and sediment control measures in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications and good engineering practices. Prevent off-site transport of sediment. Protect and manage on and off-site material storage areas. Overburden of stockpiles of dirt, borrow areas, or other areas used solely by the permitted projects are considered a part of the project. Comply with the applicable state and local laws and regulations, including waste disposal, sanitary sewer or septic systems regulations, and air quality requirements, including dust control. Prevent significant alteration of habitats mapped by the Massachusetts Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program as endangered, threatened, or of special concern. Estimated habitats of rare wildlife and certified vernal pools and priority habitats of rare species from the proposed activities. Item K, institute interim and permanent stabilization measures, which shall be instituted on a disturbed area as soon as practicable, but not more than 14 days after construction activity has temporarily or permanently ceased on that portion of the site. Properly manage on-site construction and waste materials. Prevent off-site vehicle tracking of sediments. Dust shall be controlled at the site. Divert off-site runoff from highly erodible soils and steep slopes to stable areas. The project shall comply with the following erosion and sediment control requirements. Prior to any land disturbance activities commencing on the site, The developer shall physically mark limits of no land disturbance on the site with tape, signs, or arms construction fence so that workers can see the areas to be protected. The physical marker shall remain in place until a certificate of completion has been issued. Appropriate erosion and sediment control measures shall be installed prior to soil disturbance. Measures shall be taken to control erosion within the project area. Sediment and runoff water shall be trapped and retained within the project area. Wetland areas and surface waters shall be protected from sediment. Sediment shall be removed once the volume reaches a quarter to half the height of a hay bale. Sediment shall be removed from the silt fence prior to reaching the load bearing capacity of the silt fence, which may be lower than a quarter to a half the height. Item D, sediment from sediment traps or sedimentation ponds shall be removed when designing capacity has been reduced by 50%. Soil stockpiles must be stabilized or covered at the end of each workday. Stockpile side slopes shall not be greater than 2:1. All stockpiles shall be surrounded by sediment controls. Disturbed areas remaining idle for more than 14 days shall be stabilized with seeding, wood chips, bark mulch, tarpaulins, or any other approved methods. For active construction areas such as borrow of stockpile areas, roadway improvements, and areas within 50 feet of a building under construction, a permanent sediment control system shall be installed and maintained to contain soil. A tracking pad or other approved stabilization method shall be constructed at all entrance exit points of the site to reduce the amount of soil carried onto roadways and off the site. Wilson Street and Cedar Street in the vicinity of the project shall be swept as needed throughout the construction process. Permanent seeding shall be undertaken in the spring from March through May, and in late summer and early fall from August to October 15th. During the peak summer months and in the fall after October 15th, when seeding is found to be impractical, appropriate temporary stabilization shall be applied. Permanent seeding may be undertaken during the summer if plans provide an adequate mulching and watering. All slopes steeper than 3:1, H:V 33.3%, as well as perimeter dikes, sediment basins or traps, and embankments must, upon completion, be immediately stabilized with sod, seed, and anchored straw mulch or other approved stabilization measures. Areas outside of the perimeter sediment control system must not be disturbed. Temporary sediment trapping devices shall not be removed until permanent stabilization is established in all contributory drainage areas. All temporary erosion and sediment control measures shall be removed after final site stabilization. Disturbed soil areas resulting from the removal of temporary measures shall be permanently stabilized within 30 days of removal. Item 4, a minimum of 7 days prior to the start of construction, a detailed construction sequence shall be submitted to the principal planner by the site contractor for review and approval. The approved construction sequence shall be followed throughout the course of the construction and shall be altered only with prior review and written approval from the principal planner. A signed copy of the stormwater pollution prevention plan shall be provided to the board prior to the building permit. Per 6.0.K.2, the SWPPP must include the signed notice of intent and approval letter. All required stormwater pollution prevention plan, SWPPP, stormwater construction site inspection reports should be submitted to the principal planner within 14 days of each inspection. An adequate stockpile of erosion control materials shall be on site at all times for emergency or routine replacement. Shall include materials to repair or replace silt fences, hay bales, stone filters, berms, or any other devices planned for use during construction. Soil testing and excavation of the site's stormwater basins must be observed by the board's engineer prior to laying loam and seed. The applicant developer shall notify the principal planner at least 48 hours, weekends and holidays excluded, prior to the soil test and or excavation to allow for adequate time to coordinate these observations. All stormwater basins must be cleaned once the site is stabilized. All stormwater basins should be cleaned prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Additional soil testing shall be completed within the proposed infiltration system and rain garden before construction starts, and results shall be shared with the planning board's peer review consultant for final review and confirmation of appropriateness of the design. So I'm going to go back and read the any requested waivers for the stormwater management. we're at section 2.9.2, stormwater management permit. The requested waivers are SMP submission requirements, waive administrative fee, SMP submission requirements, waive stormwater completion surety. Does anyone on the planning board have any questions about the stormwater management permit? Hearing none, I'm gonna jump to the motions, section 2. I'm going to 2.13. So there's there's going to be motions for the findings, and then there's going to be motions this is going to be a motion for the findings for the site plan, a motion for the for the decision. For the permit itself. So I'd like to entertain a motion that the board accept and approve the findings as previously read aloud for the major project site plan application.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you. I'm going to do a roll call vote unless there's any discussion anyone wants to have.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, John.
You may want to vote on the waivers first.
Okay. Could I pause, Matthew, and who did the second?
I did, Parker.
Parker, can I come back to your motion and your second and we can vote on the waivers first? Is that okay with you guys?
I'm not sure what the rules of parliamentary order would say for that. You can table the current motion. I mean, there's a second on the motion. So fundamentally, I'll leave it to John. He's usually the one that.
I don't think we have to get that formal.
All right.
I think the intent of the board would be clear if you want to move forward with the waivers and then reconsider the motion for adoption of the findings. It's just that the findings, you find that the waivers are grantable, but you haven't granted the waivers yet. So it's just, that's the issue.
I'm fine tabling the motion if that's.
Same.
Okay.
I think this is a non-controversial vote.
So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the requested waivers for the major project site plan of the site plan submission requirements, waiving the administrative fee, waiving the environmental impact assessment, and waiving community and financial impacts assessment.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Elise, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Lucia.
I don't vote on this.
Okay. Matthew.
Yes. Is there a concern that Vic isn't here in terms of quorum?
No, we're going to have enough, I'm pretty sure. Michael.
Yeah, no, I can vote on this. Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Jane.
Jane's a yes.
I think this started before Karen joined as well.
Correct.
And so Rob Benson is a yes. So I think that gets us to our 5 votes. So now I'd like to entertain a motion to waive the administrative fee and waive the stormwater completion surety for the stormwater management permit.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Elise, how do you vote?
Yes.
Matthew Ronca?
Yes. Yes.
Parker Happ?
Yes.
Michael King?
Yes.
And Rob Benson is a yes.
Jane's a yes too.
And Jane, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I tried to go rogue and try to just do it from memory as opposed to bringing up my list.
It never works out.
So now, section 2.13. First, I think we're going to do 2.13.1.1 and then 2.13.2.1. So I'd like to entertain a motion that the board accept and approve the findings as previously read aloud for the major project site plan application.
Rob, do you want to take public comment or take comment, or are you?
Sure. Is there any comments from any? Christopher, go ahead.
Through the chair. When we discussed this with the Conservation Commission regarding the site plan test or the stormwater test pit in the infiltration area, which is one of Ty and Bond's comments, what we discussed with the Conservation Commission was to do a test pit in the infiltration area. We had done one in the neighborhood of it, but I believe it was 30 feet away. Two of the members felt strongly that we should do that test pit. The one request that the applicant has is that the motion not include language that would require us to do such test pit prior to beginning work on site. The infiltration area is not expected, I believe, until 2025, and we're committed to doing it as soon as we mobilize on site, but it would be much more cost effective to the town to be able to do that test pit once we had heavy equipment on site, so that it could be done most quickly and efficiently. The other comment related to that was related to the rain garden area infiltration. There we requested not to do the test pit. That is largely an existing drainage area that is being cleaned up and renewed. So it has functioned as a drainage area since it was created, and we prefer not to disturb it in order to do a test pit for it to continue its use as a drainage area.
John, I'm looking for some guidance here of how to proceed.
It's up to the board. I mean, if you agree with what the applicant is saying, then you can change the decision. I mean, I can't tell you what to vote on.
No, it basically, I think what he requested makes sense, at least to me, at least to one person. What is the general board's sentiment?
So which ones are we changing, Rob? It's item 10 is one of them, and
through the chair, we haven't seen the final conditions, I don't believe, as they're written before you. It would be there was a request for infiltration test pits in a recommendation from Ty and Bond for infiltration test pits within the infiltration system, as well as within, I believe it's the rain garden, but I'm not sure how it's written in front of you. What we had discussed with the Conservation Commission, and they seemed amenable, although we did not have the opportunity in the public meeting to discuss the timing issue. They were okay with only having the test pit be within the infiltration area. We had done borings with monitoring wells to identify groundwater depth, but they asked that we actually do a test pit prior to committing to that location, and so we're happy to do so. We'd just like to be able to do it after the contractor mobilizes with heavy equipment.
Does anybody see where this is in our write-up?
So additional soil testing shall be completed with the proposed infiltration system and rain garden before construction starts. On item 10 is the one that I found quickly. I'm trying to find if there's another.
Through the chair, I believe that's what I'm referring to.
Okay, is that the only item that's impacted that was read?
So through the
And you
chair,
just
that's
wanted
condition 17, correct?
Yes.
Item 10. I'm seeing it.
211.117.
2.11.1.17.
Yes.
Here's what that condition reads. Additional soil testing shall be completed within the proposed infiltration system and rain garden before construction starts, and results shall be shared with the planning board's peer review consultant for final review and confirmation of the appropriateness of the design.
Rob, also 211.210 is the other one. 211.310.
211.310.
211.10. 211.10. Sorry. Yeah, 211.10. On the stormwater side. It's basically the same thing.
Through the chair, that's 211.2, number 10. Sorry. Do I need a different numbering convention on my memos? Is this too confusing?
And so this one, it says additional soil testing shall be completed within the proposed infiltration system and rain garden before construction starts, and results shall be shared with the planning board's peer review consultant for final review and confirmation of appropriateness of the design. So one is for the site plan and one is for the stormwater management permit. So I think we just need to strike for the site plan. If everybody's okay, we can defer. We can basically eliminate the phrase before construction starts and just say, we could say during construction. If that's amenable to the board.
Rob, is probably a question for John or for Steve. Is there a time frame that we could set that is a specific but reasonable time frame? Like, is there a stage of the project?
I'm going to defer to Steve on that one.
Sure. So, I mean, we're planning on, like Chris had said, we're planning on, as soon as they mobilize and get heavy equipment on site. And I would say within, Rob Blanchard, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, within 2 months of this decision, would we be able to do the testing? I mean, we'd like to do it sooner rather than later if we do, yeah.
We'll be,
So within 9
doing it right over the summer before the kids get back on site.
Yeah.
Through the chair, can I just ask the applicant a question?
Sure.
So Steve, what would be the next step after you were to do these test pits in 2 months? What would be the next step that we could say, make as the threshold prior to work, construction of the structures? Like what would you be looking to wait?
How about prior to the installation of the underground stormwater management system, we will provide another deep hole test pit in that location to confirm conditions.
So at this point after reading kind of all the conditions, can we simply say modifying item 17, modifying this from before construction starts to before the installation of the underground stormwater management system?
Through the chair, who's that question directed to?
To you, John. I think that.
Yeah, that would be the amendment that I would recommend. That for the site plan and for the stormwater management permit. And I don't believe there was a motion made on the conditions. Is that correct?
No, Matthew caught the hand raised before we made any motion. So
you don't need to amend any motions or anything like that. So you can make the motion to accept the conditions as written or as amended, read and amended. And then that would be the motion. Well, approval with the conditions as read and amended.
So moved.
Second. Through the chair, we'd also be interested if the planning board would entertain striking the rain garden from those provisions.
Well, now we have a motion.
Well, now we're gonna have to see if we can. Can you help?
There wasn't a second, right?
Yeah.
There was. Parker seconded it.
Parker's too quick on the draw. Just you can vote it down and then remove. remove the motion. If we want to get technical about it. Or amend the motion to include that language. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be this complicated.
Yeah, where is the section? I'm looking for the section. So section 17.
It's the same section. It's just the rain garden is specified there, and they want to remove it, if I recall.
Oh yeah. Okay. So it's going to modify this to additional soil testing should be completed within a proposed infiltration system before construction of the underground stormwater management system. Would Matthew and Parker be acceptable to that amendment?
What was the reason for striking that again? Was that because of timing, or they weren't doing the rain garden?
Steve, if you want to take this, my understanding is that the rain garden is functioning in that way now.
Okay.
Correct. So yeah, so Matthew, we're looking to it's a stormwater feature. We're looking to enhance it. So we're removing invasive vegetation and then putting in plantings to essentially make it more of a functional rain garden. But it's already acting as
This was the existing rain garden.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm fine with the friendly amendment given the state of the.
Same.
All right, I think we're ready to vote. Elise, how do you vote?
Yes.
Matthew Ronca.
Yes.
Parker Happ.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Jane Moran.
Yes.
And Rob Benson is a yes. All right, let's see if we can get through some more of these without butchering them too bad. So I'm moving on to 2.13.2.1. So we just approved the findings. So now we're going to try to approve the site plan. I move that the board approve the major site plan with the following conditions as modified in the previous discussion of section 17, excluding the rain garden, and modifying the language that it needs to start, the test pits need to start before construction, that they can be, as long as they're completed before the installation of the underground stormwater management system is sufficient. I move that I entertain a motion that to approve this site plan as read aloud with that modification.
Can we vote to approve the site plan as approved by the board? Is that the same thing but clearer?
If you'd like to make a motion, Matthew, you are welcome.
I'm making sure that that's actually valid for what we are. I move that the board approve the major site plan with the conditions as they were previously voted on by the board. Is that what we're, and the findings and the approval? Yeah.
Through the chair. Suggest a motion. We just say, I move the board approve the major project site plan with the conditions as they were previously read aloud by the chair and amended by the board.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All right, Elise, how do you vote?
Yes.
Matthew Ronca?
Yes.
Parker Happ?
Yes.
Michael King?
Yes.
Jane Moran?
Yes.
And Rob Benson is a yes. So the stormwater management permit. So this one is section 10 right above that we need to modify. So I move that the board accept and approve the findings as previously read aloud for the stormwater management permit application with the excluding the rain garden in section 10 and that it, as long as it's completed before.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
That's the conditions. You're voting on the findings right now.
Okay. Sorry. I move that the board accept and approve the findings as previously read aloud for the stormwater management permit application. With the modification to section 10, excluding striking the words rain garden, and that the testing can be completed before the installation of the underground stormwater management system and doesn't need to be completed before construction starts.
Was that this in the conditions, right?
Yeah, the findings are the proposed work will comply with the Hopkinton stormwater regulations, and the granting of the requested waivers has been determined to be in the public interest, and the granting of these waivers is not anticipated to adversely impact the surrounding neighborhood or the public in general. Those are the two findings proposed. I don't know if any have been added by the board.
No. All right, so this one is simple then. I move that the board accept and approve the findings as previously read or aloud for the stormwater management permit. Actually, I'd like to entertain a motion that the board accept and approve the findings as previously read aloud for the stormwater management permit application.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Elise Malowski,
Yes.
Matthew Ronka,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. So we're getting there. 2.13.2.2. I move that the board approve the stormwater management permit with the following conditions as they were previously. I'd like to entertain a motion that the board approve the stormwater management permit with the following conditions as they were previously read aloud by the chair, striking rain garden from section 10 of the above, and that the test doesn't need to be done before construction starts, but it can be done before the installation, as long as it's done before the installation of the underground stormwater management system.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I would also request that the board extend the deadline for the decision to the end of that week, because that's next Monday. Just want to make sure that we have it in time to get it signed and drafted. This week is a weird week for me, so I don't know if I can guarantee the 24th. Even the 26th would be better.
And extend the decision criteria to June
deadline.
Decision deadline to June 20. What date do you want?
26.
It's up to the applicant. Is the 26th, 27th, 28th okay? I intend on having it earlier. I just want to have some buffer just in case there's some complications.
Through the chair.
Yep.
If John could expand on what that means for the appeals period. I believe we're looking to mobilize on site on July 15th, pending permits from the building department.
So that would basically, whenever the decision is filed is when the appeal period would start. So potentially, if you extend it to the 26th and I file it with the clerk on the 26th because it's signed, then the appeal period would start on the 26th. Otherwise, it would be the 24th.
Okay.
And I intend on having this done. It's a weird week with the holiday in the middle. Don't know when I'm going to be able to get it signed. Just want to make sure that we get it done properly and we're not rushing on Monday to get it done.
No, the applicant's amenable, or through the chair, the applicant's amenable to the 26th.
All right. Extending the decision deadline to June 26th to finish that statement previously.
So moved.
Thank you, Matthew.
Second.
Thanks, Parker. Elise Malowski.
You're on mute.
We'll circle back to Elise. Matthew Ronca.
Yes.
Parker Happ.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Jane Moran.
Yes.
Rob Benson is yes. Elise. Elise.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing for 90 and 104 Hayden Row Street.
So moved.
Second.
Elise Malowski, how do you vote?
Yes.
Matthew Ronca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Michael King?
Yes.
Jane Moran?
Yes.
And Rob Benson is a yes. All right. I think you are done with the planning board.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, there he is. All right. So the public hearing for 0 East Main Street is still open from our prior meeting. There was a site walk a week ago Saturday. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend, but I hope a good portion of the board was able to attend. So we're picking up where we left off. It's my understanding, Tony, you're our peer review consultant on this project. Is that correct?
That is correct. Tony Capichetti with Weston and Sampson, 55 Walkersbrook Road, Reading, Massachusetts.
I think where I'd like to start is it's my understanding you've come to an agreement pretty much on any outstanding points with the applicant. Could you just give an overview of where things stand from your perspective?
So applicant was very cooperative. They submitted a letter and what revisions that they could, given the quick turnaround between meetings. But they agreed in substance to make all the changes that were requested, and they were fairly minor. I boiled them down to, I believe there's about a dozen outstanding issues that could be conditioned. I'll share the screen real quick. I have just a quick overview of status. So they submitted responses to all the outstanding issues in the first peer review. They've either addressed or described how they intend to address any outstanding issues, and those items could be conditioned if the planning board should it decide to do so. There was the issue of maintaining the 50-foot natural buffer. Their silt fence was about 47 feet away. There's plenty of room to move it to 50 feet. They've agreed to doing it. Just a condition that the plan be submitted with that revision. The requirement that the EV spaces also meet the ADA Mass Architectural Board regulations. They've agreed to change one of the ADA spaces to an EV space as well. It can be done easily, and again, just a condition that a revised plan be submitted. They did show the extent of the existing tree line to remain on the landscaping plan. We just think that it'd be a good idea to show it on the site plan and grading plan, because the contractor's probably not going to have the landscaping plan as they're doing tree clearing, just to kind of keep everyone on the same page as far as what's to remain. Again, condition for revised plans. They've committed to provide all applicable easements for utility construction to the board. There's a couple of areas where they have to go onto encroaching lots that are actually owned by the same seller as this, just to make sure that they have the easement documentation prior to construction, not necessarily a approval condition, but a construction condition. They provided us recommendations from an acoustic engineer, Pickleball Sound Mitigation, and you may want to just include those recommendations by reference in your decision should you decide to approve the project. to show sight distance triangles. Isn't a proposed freestanding sign. It looks like it's clear from sight distance wise, but just to show the triangle and make a note that the sign should not encroach in that triangle. So oncoming vehicles and exiting vehicles can see each other on that westerly approach. At the last meeting, we talked about the sidewalk does not go continuously across the frontage on the same side of the street. However, there's a crosswalk about midway that goes and connects to the existing sidewalk on the opposite side of the street where it crosses, where it continues. So there's access on the whole length of the frontage. It's just that it's not on the same side of the street, and there's wetlands in that area that they did not want to impact, and it would be a sidewalk to nowhere. So just that the board should make a finding that accepts this as an alternative provision. The light fixtures around the building providing pedestrian lighting are to be reduced from 15 feet to 12 feet. They're going to submit a revised lighting plan. The lighting levels were such that I'm not concerned about it dropping below 1 candle foot in that area, especially with the lower fixtures. They may need to add a fixture or two, but nothing substantial. They've stated that they'll have photocells or sensors for nighttime illumination. Just conditioning it and reinforcing it in the decision may be a good idea. They're going to add the court lighting to the lighting plan. The courts are sufficiently away from property lines that there should not be any spillover, but just that a condition similar to the one that you just passed, that there's no light spillover from the lighting. They've provided a swept path analysis. This is the one that was used with the design review boards. Fire department has supposedly seen it and signed off on it as part of that process. Just getting documentation as a condition of approval, which they said should not be an issue. So they had some minor call-out details for Cape Cod berm, just to clarify the plans. They were able to explain it as to how it should be interpreted. They're just going to clean the details up a little bit so whoever's constructing it doesn't need to ask the question. They're undergoing groundwater discharge permit review for work over the leaching field system. That, condition should require that the board receive a copy of that. The BMP location sketch that's required for operation and maintenance should be submitted as a condition of approval. Some additional language for construction phase erosion control and sequencing that's more for the local stormwater permit, just to submit that. They've described how they would do it, and it makes sense. It's just a matter of putting it in writing so they can be part of the decision. And then the signed O&M and illicit discharge statements, those would be conditions of occupancy, typically, just to make sure, just for housekeeping for the board to receive those prior to signing off on the occupancy. And other than that, like I said, these were overall pretty minor comments, kind of housekeeping and record keeping for the board. So in the future, you have everything compiled and documented.
All right, thanks, Tony. I appreciate that. Before we get going, does anybody have any questions for either our peer review consultant or the applicant? Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, I noticed that the peer review letter just got added this morning, so I haven't actually read it in detail. One of the things that we noticed walking around the property was that you could see through to one of the houses on Wayside. I was wondering if that house was included as one of the abutters and if they had any feedback or comment or any discussion there.
So which house is this? Which address?
I don't know the address, but there's one right as I think it's Wayside is the road right behind it. As it turns, there's one. If you were to walk out where your proposed parking lot is, you would look out at their second floor window.
It's right so it's Matt. I actually met with him a few times. He had concerns. He showed up actually at the ZBA meeting and raised those concerns. I actually met with him several times and we discussed those concerns. Some concerns were about the site. Some concerns were about the noise. So I shared with him the noise mitigation report that Tony was just talking about. I hired 3D designer who created a 3D model of the whole space. And I asked the designer to create kind of a view from that vantage point, from the second floor of that house, what they would actually see. And I created a few different variations, what we could create there, like in terms of the screening. Some of the options were like, evergreen, some of the options were shade trees. So we presented that along with other findings that they were looking for. They picked like one of those options, and that is what you currently have on the plan. So all the butters were included. I connected with many of them and had like really constructive discussions. So we're talking about those evergreens, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So those were added actually after that discussion. And there is kind of a U shape.
Oh, so actually no. So yeah, so that area right there is where I'm looking at, where the mouse is now.
That area.
Yeah.
So there will be a retaining wall there as well.
That was my recollection. I was going to take a look at the grading plan here. I thought it.
Yeah, there will be a retaining wall.
Yeah, so there's a berm and a retaining wall in this area. The wall here is flush. It then goes up to elevation 309 and then back down. There may be the existing tree lines shown in this area on the landscape plan, but there may be opportunities to add possibly a row of arborvitaes on the top of the berm. To add some screening if there's an issue. Although, having said that, not aware of any comments that have come in from that.
No comments coming from that side, for sure. And we just need to be careful also to allow enough space for maintenance vehicle. If there is a need to service the leaching field at some point, the maintenance vehicle needs to kind of pass there. And yeah, so.
Through the chair, we had concerns potentially about light pollution as vehicles are coming down from that ramp. And exactly that, I don't know about you, but even driving on the road these days and getting blinded, and that just the continued entrance of the parking lot there, that could be more light pollution, especially considering there are many deciduous, not conifer trees. So coverage would be leaving some to be desired in winter months. That was just one observation that we had on the sidewalk. And we know the property offset behind that gradient is slightly below. So, it's not, I'm not an engineer, but it's not like you'd be erecting, a wall, but it's just some sort of buffer. If it is arborvitaes, could be beneficial, but maybe a better idea is. But that was just something we noticed.
I thought there was a call out on here for a fence, that maybe that fence, instead of being black chain link, could be an opaque fence. That might.
So
42-inch.
It was unclear how far that went down too. Does that stop before it reaches the end of basically the line of the parking lot where that is?
Yeah, it looks like it's a safety wall above the retaining wall, a safety fence above the retaining wall.
So that's a good idea. Yeah, we could make it not kind of transparent and put some kind of fabric on top of it. Yeah, so. And if needed, we might extend a little bit further.
And through the chair, another question we had is for the dumpster location. That will have some sort of like barrier, or it will be contained, correct?
It will be contained, yeah.
Okay.
They did provide a detail. Sorry for the flipping around. I don't remember the pages directly, but there is a detail showing a dumpster enclosure.
That's fine.
So this is the solid cedar fence that goes around the dumpster enclosure. And it may have just been the solid cedar fence, but they do call out on the landscape plan, because that was one of the, or maybe it's the layout materials.
I think it's 22 Wayside is the one that goes, that angles right there.
Right in here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we could plant some trees, or we could extend that chain link fence and cover it. If you think that would be valuable.
I think something
other
that
suggestions.
Protect against light going through, especially in early evenings in the winter, as Parker said. It seems like the most vulnerable time. I'd also be interested if we could see, I think somebody mentioned that the sound dampening blankets or fences are being used somewhere else nearby. I was just wondering if we could add that to the folder, or some description of what those are.
So the sound mitigation report names a few of them. Yeah, they name a few of them. I can. So it's going to be something like, I don't know.
We can't really tell.
You can. It's thick, and if you see, it's there is like a thick insulation inside. So it's specifically designed for noise mitigation, and there are a few different solutions. So what I'm doing right now, I'm actually evaluating them. I'm ordering the samples, I'm taking them apart, I'm seeing kind of what they're made of, and I'll pick the best one that is on the market.
Do you have a timeline for when you think you'd have a decision of what you're picking, so we could have it as part of? Yeah, which one you'd pick, or is
I actually prefer not to make a decision on it soon, because this is the last thing that's going to be put. And right now there is a lot of innovation actually that's happening in the field, because noise is a big problem for the sport. So there are many companies that are coming up with the new innovative solutions that are better than what we have right now on the market. So I want to know what we have, so when new stuff comes out, I can compare, and then if it's better in terms of the kind of quality, I'd rather do that. So like, if possible, I'd rather not to commit. But as examples of what those would be, the sound mitigation report names like 3 most used right now.
I think going off of the discussion on noise, during the site walk, one of the pictures that we were shown has a wall in the outside courts that looks to be like a wall that you would practice hitting against.
The wall outside courts. So on the pictures, you mean, on like the images?
Yeah, so we got like a packet of pictures, and one of them had a wall where you would be hitting against the wall.
No, so the wall would be with that thing that I just showed, right? So the wall is not going to be a kind of concrete wall, or like you can't hit against it. It will be a chain link fence with that type of a blanket on top of it.
Okay.
Right.
So then that should.
It will be specifically done for the noise, and there is no the ball will not bounce back from that thing.
Oh, okay, because it looked like a wall that you would be bouncing off of. Like if your partner isn't there yet and you're practicing.
It's not going to work. The ball is not going to bounce back.
Okay, so you don't have a wall like that on the outside courts then?
No.
Okay, because that's what it looked like.
Yeah, on the picture. I mean, it's 3D version. But imagine like a chain link fence with like, if you've seen those tennis clubs with like 12 or 10 foot chain link with the windbreaker, right? So people are not hidden against that. So that's going to be similar to this, but just thicker and with insulation, not just a windbreaker, right? So like the ball is not going to bounce back. People are not going to be using it. But that's a good question. Yeah.
And then in terms of the location of the dumpster, I don't know if there's a chance to put it somewhere else, but it does seem to be in the closest location to the residential abutters. And living near a commercial property, I can tell you when they pick up that dumpster, they don't always wait until a good hour, and they're pretty noisy.
I need to check with my site engineer. He was pretty specific when he found that space, and he was like, okay, this is one of the few spaces where it will be possible for the dumpster to come in, to easily kind of unload and leave. But I will check to see like whether there is a better place. Initially, Tony, if you could bring the site plan, I will tell you, like, I will show you where it was initially. So you see where the EV spaces are?
Yeah.
So at the top of the EV space, right? Like the top EV space. So in that area, initially it was actually to the right of that, like in that area, right? And then the concern was that like this is the first thing that people will see as they're coming into the club. And also when a dumpster comes in, nobody else can come in or get out until they are kind of done with it. It's going to be blocking a lot of traffic. So then to address that concern, that might have actually come from fire department, I think. We decided to relocate it to that specific location, so it's kind of further away and less blocking traffic.
And one of the things that did not like that because I was looking for text. One of the items of note is that there is an existing leaching field here. So you have, you see here, this is a leaching trench, and it looks like I don't know if you'd be able to put a dumpster on top of that trench.
Yeah.
Have that support it. So that looks like much of this area is off limits, although you might be able to fit something in this gap here. But I think that's one of the driving forces behind the location, just kind of looking at the plan and understanding what some of the limitations to the site currently are.
Thank you, Tony. Like this leaching field was designed like a few years ago, like 6-7 years ago, with the idea that it will be used as a parking lot, right? So it's what's it like H20 loading, right? And we're discussing right now with Mass DEP to install GeoGrid to kind of spread the tension of vehicles. So I think it will support like wherever we put it. So if the board thinks that there is a better place potentially for it, I would love to discuss it with my site engineer to see whether it's possible to put it there, and with Mass DEP, to Tony's point, whether it will be okay with them for me to put it. But it's a good point. So potentially, it could be moved up to the middle of this row of parking space, and it's not going to impact anything because this parking space is just going to be moved down a little bit, right?
Okay. Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, do we have the sound report in the folder? I see lighting, I see traffic. I'm trying to find anything about sound mitigation and sound concerns.
I shared it, so I'm not sure whether it was put in the folder.
In this situation, John, do we have any jurisdiction over sound issues like for like a pickleball club?
Sound is something that can be reviewed as part of the site plan review. I mean, it's reviewed. So in our solar special permit, it's explicitly called out as something that the board can test for. That's a special permit, right? But sound generation for use on a certain site that can be mitigated by other site characteristics is something that the board can review.
Okay.
But the sound ordinance that exists currently, it's not going to really work for pickleball. Like it's not strict enough. So we went above and beyond of what the current kind of code suggests or requires. Like me being a player and a coach, I understand how big of a problem noise is, so I'm taking it very seriously. And you know, as you've seen, I proactively hired sound engineer who specializes in pickleball noise mitigation. Like that's all they do now.
And I appreciate all the work you've put into the renderings, into researching what's a good sound mitigation technique. I just for documentation, future purposes, I'd like to make sure that we have
with the report. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you,
John. If you don't have it, I'm happy to resend it again.
You muted, John.
Yeah, my computer yelled at me when I started talking. I don't know why I wouldn't have had it. I don't see it in the folder. I can check my emails, but I download all the documents and put it over. So if you could send it over again, that would be helpful, just so I know I have the most version.
Yeah, and I absolutely will do that. And if you want, I can bring it up right now and like show at least not the full report, but the recommendation section. So if that would be helpful.
I'm wondering how the board feels about trying to push through to the remaining sections of kind of the outline versus like if we just got the kind of letter from the peer review consultant this morning and some other things, if we are not comfortable pushing forward and trying to get to a vote tonight. Like I want to get some sentiment from the board of, do they feel they need more time to review some of the materials? Anyone have an opinion?
I feel like we need more time, and this is the first time we've met since doing the site walk, and we had concerns about the light. We haven't seen the peer review letter. I'd like to see the sound report.
Anyone else?
Can I ask a question about process?
Sure.
So I think the last meeting we said that they were going to meet with Design Review Board, which I saw that letter. And I believe also Conservation Commission.
No, Conservation Commission is going to be on the 25th. We did meet with the Design Review Board, and everything went fine. There were some interesting comments. If I may share a screen, it will be easier kind of to visualize for you.
Okay. And then my question on process for Conservation Commission, do you generally wait for applicants to go through those processes?
Lucia, I'd say it's a little disjoint. It's not completely as cohesive as you'd hope for. The processes really can run independently, and we try our best to take input, and I think they try to do their best to take input, but it's not as like lockstep as you may expect.
Okay, because sorry, through the chair.
Go ahead.
I feel like some of what has come up in the other site plan reviews has been from these meetings with other committees, and it seems like their input is helpful. So if it's the case that they haven't had a chance to weigh in yet, I feel like that would also be beneficial.
So they did have a chance. It just happened before the last meeting with planning board, right? So we had a conversation with Concom, and just like here, they also have their own independent consultant who reviewed our NOI, notice of intent, and they provided their recommendations. So we are addressing their recommendations. So there is nothing major there. Just like in this case, we are kind of going in three different directions at the same time with Concom, with planning board, and with Mass DEP, right? So we want to get far enough with all of these constituents, with all of these parties before we start modifying the plans, because we want the plans to be final rather than iteratively keep changing them to satisfy each individual party. But we have met with Concom, and like we're working with them just like we're working with Planning Board and Mass DEP to address any issues that are coming up. Those are a little bit orthogonal to what we're discussing here. They're a little bit kind of different. I mean, it's the same site. We're talking about kind of the same space, but from a different perspective. They're more looking from the wetlands perspective, right?
Yeah. So what I'd like to do is, I think I'd like to give the board members more time to review the peer review consultant letter. I'd like to see the noise kind of study or noise documentation about the noise, and I'd like to any remaining questions from the board members I'd like to be asked, and hopefully we can get to answers tonight, and then I'd like to continue this to the next meeting so we could just kind of methodically go step by step through the rest of the agenda and hopefully get to a vote. So I think I'd like to start. If there's any more questions for Yevgeny or our peer review consultant at this point in time, I think now's the time. Go ahead, John.
So not a question, but I just wanted to let the board know that Tony sent over the sound mitigation report. I had it in the file for some reason, didn't add it to the shared file. So now it's in the shared file. You guys should have access to that. Apologize for that.
All right. Thanks, John. Does anybody have any remaining questions?
Rob, just one other thing is, not really a question, but before next time, like it would be helpful, I think, to understand. Just make sure that I think it's 22 Wayside is the one that's just back there. Just make sure that there's no comments from that abutter, or that you have been able to talk with him or her.
All right.
I was also wondering, and I was reading 3.6 in terms of comments, and I was wondering if those comments have been responded to. It says there's one from DPW and one from the police department.
I read that as well, Evgeny. I don't know if you've had a chance to, if you're aware of these comments back from the DPW or the police department.
No. I'm not aware. If you could share them with me.
So, Rob, if I may, on one of them,
sure.
I think that's also one of the concerns. I think the fire department or police were asking for a connection to Wayside. So I'm curious where that would fit on the site plan if that were built, so they could have access through a different route.
No, there is no connection to Wayside, and it's that is something actually that we discussed in one of those unofficial meetings, and that was like one of the questions that was raised. We looked at it, and there is no way to do it, really.
The questions from the DPW were that they haven't heard anything from the applicant as to whether or not they are requesting town water.
Town water, yes. So we will be connecting to the water, and there is a place like where we're going to be connecting to it. Like it's going to be it will require one of those easements because the connection is in the shared driveway with the Fairview Estates. So it's on one of those plans that was submitted. Mm-hmm. So for water, yes. For sewer, no. For sewer, we'll be connecting to the wastewater treatment plant for Legacy Farms.
Okay. All right. If it's agreeable with you, Evgeny, we'd like to continue this at our next planning board meeting. Is that scheduled for July 1st, John?
Yes, the next meeting is July 1st.
Do I need to extend the decision deadline or anything?
Yeah, so if the site plan, the decision is due within 90 days of the close of the public hearing, so we're good on that, but the stormwater management permit is due June 24th. That would, excuse me. That would need to be extended, but that week, town hall is going to be closed the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So I doubt I'm going to be able to get the decision drafted and signed on the 2nd and then filed. So I would recommend we continue it to the week after, preferably the Wednesday of the week after, at the very least.
Through the chair.
Yep.
Can we, like, I'm not sure about the protocol here. I'm just asking whether we could close on the stormwater management report and the permit, because it looks like with the stormwater management, there are no concerns or issues or questions. It was more about the.
I think the concern, Yevgeny, is that because we just got the kind of our peer review consultant report about stormwater management, we just got it this morning, so everybody on the board hasn't had a chance to read it.
I think the comments were not about stormwater management mostly, right, Tony? Like stormwater management were addressed in the first report, like that we looked at, like at the last meeting.
Yeah, there were a couple of
okay
submissions that we had asked for to come in, but I think it may be in your best bet just to wait for the next hearing and do everything at once, just in case you get any more input from conservation going forward. And again, the less you have conditioned, the easier your things are to comply with the decision. So
fine.
So, John, can you just make sure I'm saying the wording here right? I'd like to I'd like to entertain a motion to extend the decision deadline for the stormwater management permit to July 10th, 2024.
And continue the public hearing.
And continue the public hearing to July 1st.
And then you want to do the same for the hearing of the site plan.
And I'd like to extend the decision deadline for the site plan to July 10th.
Sorry, just the hearing to the July 1st.
And I'd like to extend the hearing to July 1st for the site plan at 0 East Main Street.
So just to clarify through the chair, that's to to continue the hearing for the stormwater management permit and the site plan to July 1st and the decision for the stormwater management permit to July 10th, correct?
All right, yes, I'd like to entertain a motion to continue the public hearing for the site plan and the stormwater management plan to July 1st and extend the decision deadline for the stormwater management plan to July 10th.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you, Parker. Thank you, Jane. All right. Everyone can vote on this. So, Elise, how do you vote?
Yes.
Lucia?
Yes.
Matthew Ronca?
Yes.
Michael King?
Yes.
Parker Happ?
Yes.
Jane Moran?
Yes.
Karen Wills?
Yes.
And Rob Benson is a yes. So Yevgeny, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Everybody. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So with that as I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn or tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Matthew.
Second.
Thanks, Parker. All right, Elise, how do you vote?
Yes.
Matthew Ronca?
Yes.
Lucia Lopez?
Yes.
Michael King? I don't know. Michael, did you? I didn't hear you if you said yes. So apologies.
Yep, I said yes.
Parker Happ?
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is yes. All right. Thanks, everybody. See everybody in 2 weeks.
The chair,
Oh,
Mr. Benson,
yeah, Lori?
are we supposed to be closing the public hearing or no?
No, we left the public hearing open because it's going to continue to next.
Gonna continue,
Next.
okay.
Yep.
So just to confirm, for the first motion, to continue the public hearing for 0 East Main Street, we're doing that for July 1st, and then continue the public hearing for stormwater management and site plan. That's going to July 1st with a decision deadline of July 10th.
Both the site plan and the stormwater management plan are continued to July 1st. The decision deadline for the stormwater management plan is moving to July 10th.
July 10th. Okay, I got confused.
That's okay.
Alrighty, thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.
Night.
You too.
All right,
Bye bye.
thank you.
Bye.
Good night.